started, to try as close to time as we possibly can. We appreciate you guys for being here today and for everything that's gone on so far. We have obviously had a great session so far, and so we're trying to see if we can get this on, stay on track and stay on the road. But we appreciate everybody. We'll have a chance hopefully to talk some more about what we have absorbed as we go through, but we want to stay as close on track as we possibly can. It's raining, and so we're going to give people a chance to come in, but we got to stay on track. I want to say thank you, but I want to go through this really quickly. That's the just the reminders. I think hopefully you'll go. Yeah, you can skip through all that. Just get to all that here for me. Okay, you can get your materials, online. We don't do it anymore. You'll have to get them, download them, and then go to that next one. Please email them to me by next Friday. That's the most important thing. Just get them to me and I'll get them in. And if you have the last slide, if you have out of state forms, make sure that you submit them individually to your own board. All right, we have just had dynamic presentations throughout the entire day, yesterday, even the day before, and with Malik Yoba starting off and just all the way up to this point. So at this point, we're going to continue in that line, and we're going to bring up, again, we've had the best of the best, and we have one of the best here with us today, in Arkie Byrd, and she's going to speak with us about whether or not the Hunt decree is still relevant or not. And so I want to, without further ado, and have Arkie Byrd come up. So.
Morning to those who are present and to the Zoom audience as well. At least you get to stay in your pajamas and enjoy the day, staying in from the rain. But I want to thank Willard and Judge Boyd Connor. Did I get that right? Yes, ma'am. Okay. For inviting me and a little strong arming me to do this. But they know who to send to strong arm me, that I cannot say no to. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I've ever publicly spoken about the Hunt case during all these years. I don't think I've ever been invited in any kind of forum, media, well, I turned the media down and I'll tell you about that. But I have never been invited on any kind of program to ever talk about that I can remember. And I've gotten older, but I just cannot recall ever publicly speaking about the case. I think we've all seen the effects of the litigation, and we're still living through it. And we have, I call our second generation Hunt judges on the bench now, who succeeded the first wave. And here in Pulaski County, the first wave was, of course, our dear friend and departed friend, Wiley Branton Jr., Judge Marion Humphrey. Who else? Judge Alice Gray. Who else have I had? And Morris Thompson and Willard Proctor as well. Okay. And to some extent, Joyce Warren, but she was a carve out because she had been on the bench prior to the Hunt case. And then we have the people, and I'm not going to name them, that are in parts of eastern and southeastern Arkansas who took the bench as well. And I think all of those original people are now gone, and they are maybe, I don't know if Keaton, if Keaton is still on the bench. What's Keaton's first name? I can't. Edwin Keaton. I should know it because we were in college together. But he's probably the only one from that original class that's still on the bench. I think Leon Jameson in the Pine Bluff area retired last year, and he was an original Hunt judge. I'm gonna have to talk above a driving rain. Okay, but what I thought I'd do is give you all a little history of how this case came about, because Eugene Hunt, who was my original plaintiff and the person who came to me to do the lawsuit, he reached out to me, and Eugene testified in our Voting Rights Act case that sought to expand opportunities for African Americans to be elected to the appellate bench. And I don't know, but if many of y'all know, but we were not successful in that. We have filed a motion for reconsideration on that, but so far, we weren't successful in that. But in the process, Eugene Hunt was one of our witnesses, and Eugene has practiced law in patent law for many years. And Eugene is someone that I knew from when I was in undergraduate school, because he was in law school. And so I kind of got to know him a little during that era. But Eugene testified to how it came about, what inspired him, or what his motivation was to pursue a Voting Rights Act claim to, quote, desegregate the trial court bench in Arkansas. And he had gone to one of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I'll just say LDF for short, because I think that's pretty much what everybody knows them as, is LDF. But every year, LDF has historically done a retreat seminar for its cooperating attorneys, its staff attorneys, and invited guests. And it's been going on, I believe, since the 60s. And Eugene's, and it was called Early for many years because it was held in a facility outside Washington, a retreat area called Early, but I think they sort of broadened it out now. And that's a retreat seminar that many African-American lawyers from Arkansas, believe it or not, have attended over the years, at least when I first started practicing law and before. And I think some of the motivation and prompt was there was so much litigation early on, especially after the passage of Title VII and the Voting Rights Act. And then John Walker, who this symposium is named for, right? John was a long-time cooperating attorney for LDF, but John also was on the board of LDF for many years, okay? So Eugene said he attended the retreat, and he was hearing updates on the 1982 amendment to the Voting Rights Act. And the opportunities that were created by the extension of the Voting Rights Act and its amendment in 1982, and some of the litigation that followed it, created that pathway. And so he got the idea from having attended one of LDF's retreat seminars, and thought that some of what he learned there could be used to challenge the system of electing circuit court judges in Arkansas. I'll say trial court judges, okay? And so Eugene approached me, and I believe that Eugene probably knew that, and this was in 1989, I think. It's been a while, a moment. And it was either 88 or 89 that he. No, that's when it was filed. That's not when he approached me. It takes a while before you have a viable complaint. It's not one and done. It doesn't work that way. It takes a lot. And that initial complaint, LDF was not on that complaint. But Eugene approached me because he knew of my relationship as a cooperating attorney with LDF. By then, I came back to Arkansas in the mid-80s, and I don't think I'd been home a year when LDF contacted me about doing a Voting Rights Act case. And my first one was not the Hunt case, but it wasn't a case dealing with the judiciary. It was issues related access to the ballot. And I worked on that case with, so long ago, but I worked on that case with Professor Lonnie Guinier, and I think many of you all know who she is. We lost her last year. And former Governor Deval Patrick was also starting his career at LDF. So those are the people I early on worked with. I had already known Lonnie Guinier from my career in Washington because our careers overlapped and I kind of got to know her somewhat and in Washington. But Eugene, I think, was aware of my relationship and that I had some prior litigation with them, which was successful because we ended up settling that case as well. And so he reached out to me because of that connection, and which is smart and strategic. I'm not blaming him at all. That's what you do. Okay. And the first thing I did was I called Lonnie Guinier. And I was like, Lonnie, I've been approached, da, 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 da. And if you know anything about voting rights cases, you kind of have to work backwards. You got to first fashion a remedy, which is usually a map showing that it's possible that you can create a map that will have a majority Black voting age population. I may say Black VAP, but that's voting age population that has 51% or more. And there are other traditional redistricting principles that also have to be a part of what that map. And that's why we have experts and people who we work with over the years to help us in that process. And it was the same in the Hunt case. Once I came on and reached out to LDF, we certainly started trying to shape a viable complaint and vehicle, because I believe that complaint was amended to add some plaintiffs, but also amended substantively at least once when LDF came on, because it wasn't the kind of it had some vulnerabilities and it had to be put in good shape. Excuse me. And we worked through that, but we had a bit of a vexing kind of situation when it came to the area around Jefferson County and how you create the sub-districts over there. And that took some brainstorming and thinking about. But what we came up with was to first aggregate the districts or the population of Black people, and then divide and create the districts. And that's eventually why you have 11 East and 11 West for that judicial district. I believe that's what it is. Okay. We also had to expand our plaintiffs, because you want plaintiffs that represent the affected judicial districts. And so we ended up adding some additional plaintiffs to the case. And besides Eugene Hunt, my faithful and always comrade in arms and in disruption of the status quo, Ollie Neal, was one of our plaintiffs. Love Ollie. Apparently he's doing better. He was at the Black Hall of Fame. So I'm like, okay, but yeah, okay, Ollie's doing better. But Ollie Neal was one of our plaintiffs. Miss Evangeline K. Brown, I don't know if anybody remembers her. You got to be a little older. She was from the Eudora area, Miss, and she was a community activist. She was the bomb. She was the bomb, and I got to spend time with and to know Miss Brown. But she was one of our, and we actually paid a road trip to Miss Brown. One of the delights of having worked with Lonnie and Governor Patrick was that we would get to travel the back roads of Arkansas, visiting people, getting anecdotal information, understanding interests in the various communities, and for Deval and Lonnie, scouring out the best barbecue joint in town. Okay. All right. I mean, it's what it was. So we had twofold purposes. Miss Riola Hancock, which I kind of remember, but I don't remember her as well. And we added Bishop L. Burris and Benny O'Neill, because Benny lives in that part, I believe, of Lono County, of Lono, that is in Pulaski County. Many people don't know that a portion of Lono is in Pulaski County. Okay, I didn't know that until then. Okay, yes, all right. And we needed someone representative of that area as well. And once again, another faithful, loyal, long-time serving organization that has just been with us time and time again, the Christian Ministerial Alliance. I mean, a shout out to them. This is the congressional redistricting case that I'm doing is my, let's see, 1, 2, 3. It's my, this is my 4th time with them as plaintiffs. And they have been just wonderful and connecting us with community and so many other things that we need to support our litigation. The state, nowadays, you can't sue all of these people, but we sued all of the major office holders in Arkansas, including Governor Clinton, who was governor at the time, secretaries of state, the election commission and all its members and so forth. But and I worked on the case, the attorney, although I worked with Lonnie Grenier in shaping the case and getting it on an even keel and sound legal footing, she was transitioning from LDF to academia because she, for several years, was a law professor at the University of Pennsylvania. And after she left Pennsylvania, she went to Harvard. And as many of you may know, she was the first Black woman, a woman of color, whichever you want to call it, to be tenured as a law professor there. So it was very, very historic, okay, for her to get that position. But Lonnie always kind of keeps her hands in the pot, at least up until a certain point. And, but the attorney that eventually was lead counsel for LDF was Dana Cunningham. And Dana has since left LDF, and Galen McGowan, and there were a couple of other people who came in and out. And then locally, it was myself as local counsel, but also PA Hollingsworth, Les Hollingsworth. How many people, now the young people may not know who Les is, most of you all do know who Les was, okay? And Les was also my compatriot and my comrade in advocacy litigation over the years. We promised each other when I first moved home to practice law that we would work on civil rights cases together. And you don't know what's going to come and what's not going to come, but eventually, yeah, but Les and I really did. And Les had a mercurial personality, as some of you all probably know. But I tell my law partner, Richard Mays, that I never really saw that aspect of Les. I'm proud to admit I absolutely love Les Hollingsworth and love working with him and so forth. But the first time we worked together on a civil rights case was the Hunt case. And then Les and I also did a police shooting case against the Little Rock PD. And that one went to trial, and we also had LDF on that one, and I'm not advertising to do these cases. Sorry. But it was a wonderful experience. And but that's some of the history on how we got to where we are with the Hunt case, because in the history of the state of Arkansas, there had never been an African-American elected to a trial court of record. We had Judge Humphrey on the municipal court, now the district courts, and we may have had someone else. I think attorney, what's his name, Martha Gibbs, historically had served on a city court in Arkansas. That goes back to the 20s of the turn of the century. Gibbs Elementary School is named for him, okay? But trial courts and courts of record had never happened. And and there was, this litigation was going on all over the country. It wasn't just Arkansas. So once we mounted a viable legal vehicle, we started the discovery, and which was quite extensive, and a lot of depositions, lots of going through records, and you name it. It takes a team. It really does. I can't imagine one person doing this. I really can't. But the politics of our case worked in our favor, because ahead of us that was already filed was the Jeffers redistricting case for the Arkansas legislature. That was an LDF case. And they knew that they could draw more House and Senate districts that would give African Americans more opportunities to get elected to the state legislature. But that was the Jeffers case, and it was about a year ahead of us, not that much. And it had a different team of people. In fact, they had about 9 lawyers on that case. That case was actually tried before a 3-judge panel that included Judge Howard, Judge, who was on that? Judge Isley, who is since deceased, was longtime district court judge. And who was the other judge? I can't think. I want to think it was Judge Arnold, but I don't think so. I can't think of who that 3rd judge was. But that case was tried over the federal courthouse. It was about a 3-week trial. That was a long trial. That was a lot of work. Our 415 Main was ground central for the litigation team, and Les Hollingsworth was on that case too. Les was on that case, okay? And Ollie Neal was local counsel, and there were some other people. I'm thinking Bill Llewellyn, but Bill Llewellyn was also one of the attorneys on the Hunt case. Yeah, Bilbo, that's everybody knows his nickname. All right, and we lost him last year as well. But why our case was in a better posture politically was because of Jeffers. You know, when you go 16 rounds and you lose at the 3-judge panel stage, okay? You know, your only way up is if the Supreme Court hears it. And I'm not sure if the state appealed it or not. But I think that, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I do remember that Judge Richard Arnold wrote the majority opinion, and it was a 2-1 split, okay? And I don't know to what extent any of you remember or know of Judge Richard Arnold, who the federal courthouse is named for. For me, in many ways, they don't come any finer and any more brilliant and down to earth and a genuinely terrific human being. I met him early in my career in Washington because he ran Senator Bumper's staff. And one of my earliest interviews for a job was on the staff of Bumpers, and Richard Arnold interviewed me. And I just have such fond memories of him. But when he writes an opinion, you got an opinion. You got money in the bank if he's with you, because his legal analysis and level of brilliance was just there. And it didn't overpower you. It was accessible. You could follow him and so forth. He was just a very down-to-earth kind of person in his approach to his legal analysis, but deadly and on spot. But because the state had litigated the Jeffers case ahead of us, and in the Jeffers case, there was a finding of a 14th Amendment violation, intentional discrimination. That's hard. That standard is hard, always has been hard, because you have to show intent and purpose. And they met that standard. So by the time our case is coming along, the politics, it sort of shifted and changed. I don't think the state wanted to go through this again, because some of the same evidence and testimony that was used in Jeffers was probably going to be used in our case as well. So in a way, they were our test run. And I don't know if you all know this or not, but we have a consent decree because the state settled and they admitted the discrimination. They admitted the violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and they admitted that there was a 14th Amendment violation here. Okay, so our pathway was somewhat paved ahead. And so the task then was to sit down and fashion the decree that we now have. And its implementation, and there's some administrative things that are built into it as well. Once the decree had been entered, the people who were going to be running for office ran in 1992, and they took office January of 1993. And so that was our first class. There were bumps in the road along the way. Judge Humphrey and Judge Gray can tell you chapter and verse of the resistance that they met, not only from within the courthouse, but from members of the bar as well. The local newspaper editorial page didn't seem to get enough of commenting and being not all of that thrilled about the results that we achieved. And they were calling names, including mine and Les. And believe it or not, I stopped reading all of that. And it was the best way for me to deal with it, because I was having people, I saw your name in the paper. Well, yeah. Or I saw it, and I just didn't have any conversation. We did our job. We achieved a major historical result, and we had wonderful people to take the bench. And that was a reward in and of itself for me. Were you raising your hand, Patrice? Okay.
2 questions.
Mhm.
Who paid you?
I have never. Oh, I'm being asked who paid me. Let me say from the very beginning, if you work with LDF and if you do this kind of work, you don't get paid unless you are the prevailing party in these lawsuits, because within the Voting Rights Act and some of the other Civil Rights Act, they are fee shifting, but you have to prevail. And I have never taken a case with LDF with the expectation of getting a dime. And I think that that's probably some of the challenge that a lot of people have with wanting to do this work, especially if you are practicing law and we all have financial obligations and so forth and responsibilities. Well, I did too. And so did Les, and a family and kids going to college, but you don't take on this work for the money. You really don't. And that's why, our ranks are small, or not, at least not everywhere. I'm not going to say that, but it's generally true that that's a challenge for a lot of people. But there are lots of ways that you can support this kind of litigation. We did get attorney's fees in the Hunt case. And Les took the lead in negotiating. We settled the fee matter and everything, okay? My first Voting Rights Act case, because we were the prevailing party, I did receive fees. LDF usually expends a lot of the costs involved. You have to have, that's why it's hard to imagine a one person doing this, because you have to have financial resources, and you also need human resources in terms of people to help in the litigation and so forth. But no, if we don't prevail, I don't see anything. The cost will be paid, And nowadays, when we do these cases, we usually are paired. LDF usually brings in a large law firm, usually major law firms on the east or the west coast. And the voting rights case that we litigated last year, Shearman and Sterling, which is not only national, they're multinational, they're everywhere. They're one of the largest in the country. But Shearman and Sterling came on that case with us, and we had like 3 attorneys from that firm who was on the case. And then we had, I can't think of the name now, but we had a law firm, a more of a boutique-like law firm in New York, they're in Manhattan, who reached out to LDF and say, hey, can we help you all? And they came on with a couple of attorneys who were just wonderful to work with and terrific to get to know. But you have to put your litigation team together. And in the Hunt case, of course, we have that team and so forth. And then you need to have experts. And I sent around an email early October, letting the members know that the congressional redistricting case that LDF had won in South Carolina was being argued before the U.S. Supreme Court on October the 11th. And you could tune in to audio only for the live stream of it, which I did. And it was a long argument too. And Leah Alden, who was lead counsel for LDF in the South Carolina case, in the South Carolina congressional redistricting case, the Arkansas case is very much like that. And Leah is on our case. So I've been working with Leah Alden now for a good year or so. And I'd known Leah before this case as well, because she's been at LDF for quite a while. But the arguments were just incredible. And she was just the bomb as well. She's been carrying the torch on these cases. And her oral argument, I think she was up for at least an hour, because that oral argument took at least a couple of hours and then some. And it was very interesting as well. So I just wanted to make sure that and you can go back on the Supreme Court website and you can re-listen to oral arguments and so forth. So you can hear how these issues are shaped up and so forth. So all of this new technology was not going on during the time of Hunt. The discovery was very, I'm over at the state capitol going through documents and so forth and so on. I mean, it's like hand to hand, old school. And now it's so, the technology has just made all of this so different than when I first started out. And I'm learning things along the way. But, I kind of fuss, and Cara knows this, that I have not had any younger African-American attorneys to ever reach out to me to say, Arkie, can I do some work? What do you have to be, let me know anything, whatever, I'll help you, or, you know, if you need me, you know, time permitting, da, 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 da. You know, I haven't had that happen yet. And, and I'm still waiting and I'm still hopeful that that is gonna happen. And even if you are an attorney, this stuff is really not rocket science, but it does require a commitment. And there are points of entry besides you signing off to be counsel on a case. There are all kind of things that I think that we can be creative, that you can do to help support this kind of litigation. And I'm hoping that, you know, before I retire, I get to see that. And I will, and I was telling Cara that, let's just say Judge. Okay, that LDF started the Marshall Motley Scholars Program, and that I know of at least 2 people from Arkansas have gotten selected for that program. It's very competitive, very. And one reason it's very competitive is because it's a wraparound scholars program. They pay for everything, your law school, room, board, tuition, I mean, you name it. They find you, they place you in internships, clerkships in between during the summers. Once you have graduated, you will be placed in a community to get further exposure and experience and support to do civil rights work in the South. And I think that LDF realized that it's important for them to grow their own, to identify young people early who can make that kind of commitment and who are willing to come back to the South to do the challenging work that started so many years ago to make us full citizens.
Arkie, what do you think that the future holds for the country? The Arkansas, the current climate?
I can't, you know, I'm old and I can't hear as well as I used to.
What do you think the future holds for the political climate for the country? What do you think is going to get attacked? What do you think?
Well, you know, the world is, everything is cyclical. And if you were born, he was asking about the current climate and try to cast and project where we're going in Arkansas, which I don't know. But I will say this, I've lived long enough, and some of you have too. Now, there's some of us who lived through the 60s, am I not right, Judge Bell? Well, Judge Griffen is in the corner. We were kids and teenagers during the 60s, were we not? And I don't know about you. Okay. And we remember a lot because we were born, we were still in Jim Crow. It's not 50 million years ago. Okay. Our parents were born in Jim Crow. Okay. And you have to develop, and I preach, but I preach to myself more than anybody else because I need the inspiration as well as anybody, that things are cyclical. And we like to say that history repeats itself. I think that some flavors of history may resurface, but it never totally repeats itself exactly the way we think it will. But most of you all don't know the worst of times. It's like, I have to remind some of the younger people on our litigation team that you all haven't seen the worst. Okay? That, what did James Baldwin, his statement, well, we've all been paid for. Somebody's already paid the price for you to be sitting here in this room, driving that car, living wherever, having a life that grandparents, great grandparents could only fantasize about. Yeah. but you're not home free.
All right.
And a lifestyle does not make you an equal citizen. There's a lot. Zoom people, there's a lot of clapping in the room. They do not. There are people who believe that the sum total of the civil rights movement was for us to mirror white middle-class lifestyle.
You say that.
And then you find that you have barriers when you drive up in your nice car to vote, or that your vote doesn't carry the weight of someone across town.
Right.
And I'm just saying, is that free? Is that equal citizenship? That our public schools are being starved
Right.
and our tax money diverted in ways that I still think is unconstitutional, okay? And so we're not free. We're not full citizens. We may be subjects, but we are not full citizens yet. Yes, Austin Porter,
Out of the woods, yeah.
the great Austin Porter, always have to.
With all that,
Mhm.
you know, you can have a Ron James about, you know, lifestyle, they can put it free.
It does.
I mentioned yesterday that, the Attorney General has launched an all-out assault against the school districts who have these, consent decrees.
Mhm.
To segregate the school, and now they're going after those.
Mhm.
And you best believe that punch
Oh,
is
yeah.
on the target as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And so they're planning.
Yeah, they are.
Sitting back.
No, well,
Well,
actually, we're aware and we monitor and we know. And we've had some runs at it over the years. Back in 2018, 2019, we had an effort to sort of reconfigure judicial districts under the guise of neutral reasons, but we're gonna impact Hunt. And that got beat back, but we know other challenges are coming. And some of why it was beat back is because many of the judges around the state, and I'm not just talking about African-American judges, they weren't in favor of turning things upside down either. They have a bone in this fight too. And I started getting calls from judges all over the affected areas. Some I knew, some I didn't know. And because of what was supposedly going to be proposed, but anything that is proposed to the changes in the judicial districts of any kind has to start with the Arkansas Judicial Council. And under the Hunt decree, anything that could affect the Hunt districts, I am to get notice of. And no changes can be made without a court order. Okay. Now, the judiciary is another thing. You know, the original judge in the Hunt case was Henry Woods. I don't know who all remember Henry Woods. Some of you know how Henry Woods was. And if he was with you, he was with you. And they don't make them like that anymore. But, you know, Henry Woods, he didn't care if, you know, y'all can be mad over here, y'all can this over there. If he was with you and if he thought the law and you were right, he was gonna do it. And that's the way he was, okay? You never want him not on your side. And I have seen Judge Woods. I litigated criminal voting rights case for LDF, but I was CJA at the time, so they said, Arkie, get appointed. Okay, so you can get paid, Latrice, okay? And also we were able to get a handwriting expert, but the Bush 1 administration was using the criminal provision of the Voting Rights Act to prosecute people in the South, primarily Black people in the South, when it came to registration and the absentee ballot. And they had targeted Arkansas and Eastern Arkansas. Well, I had a plaintiff and my co-counsel, Anthony Griffen, he had a plaintiff. We were on the same indictment, but Les Hollingsworth and Darrell Brown had some plaintiffs as well. They had Henry Woods, we had Judge Asley, we all went to trial. The US Attorney's Office here did not try that case. The Public Integrity section of the Justice Department in Washington, that's who prosecuted the case. And this was one of these cases where there wasn't going to be a plea. There was never going to be a plea. It was going to be a fight to the death on this one, okay? And I think we got, for the most part, a really good result. And I will never forget, I went over to the sentencing hearing. I had the only client that, for the most part, except for one count, she was acquitted of everything. Les and Darrell Brown's clients were convicted. In my case, the judge never, well, he said, we'll revisit this issue on post-trial briefs and motions. And we filed our motion, and the attorneys, we were wiped out. LDF got the clinic program, one of the legal clinical programs at Fordham University Law School, to do the brief for us. And our brief was successful. Judge Asley, if I can remember, ruled that the conduct that was described in the indictment was first protected by the First Amendment. Now, maybe Trump's lawyers may find that case, but okay, so we, you know, the government wasn't going to sit for that, and they did appeal to the Eighth Circuit. And I think Les and I had to go up and argue that case at the Eighth Circuit. I think they had oral arguments on it, okay? And we didn't prevail, it came back down. Same thing for Les' case and Darrell Brown's case. The result of, in my case, my client got convicted on one of the substantive counts. And after the sentencing guidelines were in effect by then, believe it or not. And she ended up getting home detention. And I'm like, that's a win. When you walk free, and the New York Times covered this case. And the most read edition of the New York Times is the Sunday edition, and they did a big spread on our case and my client. So it got a lot of attention and everything. But in Les and Darrell's case, the Eighth Circuit, in its own way, it's a different Eighth Circuit now, they pointed out to Judge Woods under the sentencing, did you look at this over here, you know, in terms of sentencing options and mitigation? And it came back down, and Judge Woods, they walked. He gave them no time. And he gave the government a tongue lashing like I have never heard. You know, you came down here to persecute these people, and everybody knows that it's been crooked over there in Eastern. I was like, oh my God, okay. That, you don't see that anymore, but we had these personalities that were larger than life during that time. Okay, so that was a success, okay? And I lose my train of thought, but we got a lot of support in that case. My clients were just workaday single mothers. They didn't have a whole lot. Federal Judge Miller, at the time, I think his father was the mayor over in Helena, West Helena. You all, Kathleen, or was he West Helena, Helena? Helena. His dad made sure that the trial was here in Little Rock. They lived in Eastern Arkansas. We opted to try it here, okay? He made sure they got to Little Rock every day, even if he had to bring them himself, okay? And he was supportive throughout the litigation of these two women. I always like to tell that story. Because, you know, the Miller family was larger than life in Eastern Arkansas. Miss Eliza Miller, who was an activist, and they named the high school after her. She was just legendary. But But her son was also an activist and supportive. And like I said, there are things sometimes people can do that's not about signing on the dotted line or, doing a brief, that can be supportive. And it is always appreciated, always appreciated. Okay. Anybody else with any more questions? I think my time is exhausted.
No problem. We have a question from Zoom from Judge Mark Leverett.
Judge Leverett, I'm never in his courtroom. I used to back in the day.
There's a question from Judge Byrd as well. If you want
Okay.
to address that while we pull up the second.
You do it.
Okay,
If you see it, yeah.
you may want to repeat it, Ms. Byrd. It says there are 79 state district judges across the state. Out of that number, there are only 3 African-American judges, 2 in Pulaski and 1 in Jefferson. Do you believe the Hunt reasoning could apply to elect more representative numbers of state district judges, considering the fact that the majority of citizens have their contact with district courts, the majority of those citizens are Black and brown? I know there's a mouthful.
Oh, but whether or not Section 2 could get at and possibly increase the number of African-American, at least increase the opportunity for African-Americans to get elected to these district court positions. I've always thought so. Now we're in different time in terms of the judiciary, so you have to always be mindful of that, okay? But I have always thought that there was some vulnerability. We got to use Section 2 as long as we have it. We need the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill passed. That's a restoration and amendment, and it creates the kind of language that we need to overcome some of these opinions that have been handed down. Okay, and this has happened in the past as well. Just like I think that this is my personal opinion, I think the playing field for Title VII is uneven now. Some of it's the judiciary and the more conservative judges that we have, on the bench. And the law is, to me, is out of kilt. It is, and Austin can speak to this, Willard. It's incredibly difficult just to get the case to trial, am I not? Most of them go away on a motion for summary judgment. That's an uneven playing field. Nobody says the N word, nobody writes on the walls the way. It's not the world that John Walker, Phil Kaplan, and Richard Mays litigated in the late 60s, 70s, and so forth. The racism has metastasized. It disguises itself. It is creative. And we have to be creative and fearless and push the envelope. That's what it takes. And you don't need everybody. King didn't have everybody, although they all claim they did. But I remember Judge Griffen and other people, you remember? No. You're never gonna get 100%. You just need a little critical mass. That's where change starts from the bottom up. There's nothing historically to support change being top down in the world. I learned that from listening to the man who was the founder of Highlander. Do you all know what Highlander is? That's where training for voting rights, education that went on in the 40s and the 50s. That's where Rosa Parks trained. And a lot of Septima Clark. Now, do you know who Septima Clark was? These are all historical. That's why we need our history in the schools and the church and everywhere. So our people would know we have a fine legacy, okay? And it just didn't happen. These things have to be well thought out, strategic, tactical, and substantive. And no, you're never going to get anybody, but you never are. The few have always pushed the envelope and broken down the doors and the barriers and so forth. And we want you to participate. But once you walk through the door, please remember how you got there? And also, you can be creative and stealth in the ways that you can make change or create opportunity. It doesn't have to look the way everybody thinks it necessarily have to look. And we have to learn how to respect that when you're operating within an institution and a system. And we need to go back to civics, because I think a lot of people don't know how hard it is to get a bill passed in Congress, even when you have a majority Democrat. It's not, it's not as easy. And the John Lewis Voting Rights bill, we had majorities, I think, in both houses at one time. But you got that Senate filibuster. Okay. And there's a whole history on that some say is entangled in race. That is not as neutral, that its origin is not as neutral as people seem to think it is. I think my time is up, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to be on break. Thank you.
Right. We are on to the next CLE this morning. We are here today for a panel discussion on solutions to civil rights issues. And so we have two distinguished guests with us today. Be retired, but not
He's not retired.
but not Judge, Lord, my brain just Wendell, Griffen, Lord, I'm looking dead at you, Judge, and I forgot your name, but yes, Judge Wendell, Griffen, the incomparable Judge Griffen.
Keep living, it'll happen more.
And we also have here today the executive director of the ACLU with us, Holly Dickson. She's here on behalf of her nonprofit and to talk about some of the things she's also doing. And so I'm here, my name is Cara Connors. I'm here as the moderator to just facilitate this conversation. And so I am here to learn, and not talk. So I'm gonna let them do a lot of the talking here today. And so we've heard so many dynamic speakers throughout the week. I don't know if any of you attended last night, but Representative Justin Pearson talked profoundly about issues with civil rights, where we are in our society. He was on fire. On fire. I mean, if you were not in the room, you truly missed the tree, but it goes hand in hand on what we want to talk about today. And so first, let's start with the first question that I have here today. And it is about just what do you think the status of civil rights issues is currently in our society now? We are a post-civil rights era. I think the idealism of equality was sought at that point, but have we attained it? If not, how do we get there? So I'll kick it off with the incomparable Judge Griffen.
Thank you, Judge Connor. I'm gonna respect the learned counsel in the place and also respect my colleague, Judge retired Kathleen Bell, who's here. I'm glad to be on this panel with Holly Dickson and be invited. It is hard for us to ignore the fact that civil rights is more of a challenge now than people want to admit, because the issue of civil rights stopped being a popular thing for people to talk about in 1970. And since the end of the 60s, the issue of civil rights, which at one time, I'm old enough to remember when civil rights was a subject area on opinion polls. The Gallup poll, when they talk about the different issues, they'd ask about civil rights. They don't ask about that anymore. They don't ask about it anymore. And so I think, to your point, Judge, it's a very, very vibrant question. Issue of racial rights, voting rights, LGBTQI rights, issues of women's rights, the issues of rights of people with varying disabilities. These are issues that are very much, and we have to remember that we still live in the most incarcerated society in the modern industrial age. And so I think the issues are very, very dominant. However, the attention to those issues has been muted, in large part because politically, the political parties no longer want to invest the work in getting civil rights issues before, which is why we have problems getting judges.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for allowing me to be here in this beautiful space. We have a long way to go on every civil right or civil liberty that we have. You name it, it's under attack. The optimist in me says, given that every single civil right and civil liberty is under attack today and will be tomorrow and also next week, it is harder for society to ignore. And people who were not directly affected or thought they were not directly affected 2 years ago can no longer deny those effects for themselves and their loved ones. And so I'm seeing more of a rising up and coming together than I have before in my lifetime. So I think in large, in some ways, the all-out assault is actually fueling our work and our movement to try to get to equality and protect the other rights that have been guaranteed and promised to everybody in America.
Yeah. And you say an all-out assault. I think one of my questions says, do you believe it's an assault? And I think that I was asking the question, but really the answer is there is an assault on civil liberties currently, especially for marginalized communities. Do you think that in the wake of Supreme Court decisions like the Fair Admissions Committee versus Harvard and the gutting of Roe versus Wade, is it obvious that there is a tide changing in some legislators and lawmakers of their perception of what equity is and the civil liberties? And what do you think attributes to that shift? Or was there always that mentality and it was just being muted, as Judge Griffen says? But now it seems to be a prominence that people are outwardly, overtly speaking on their disagreement with equity and how that looks for marginalized communities.
I first want to acknowledge that we have some champions who, I can't say fight tirelessly because it is exhausting, but we do have a minority of folks in the Arkansas General Assembly who continue to stand up, as well as in Congress. But the vast majority of politicians in power in this state and this nation are out of touch with the impacts on Americans and the values that Americans hold. Poll after poll after poll, whether it's Roe v. Wade, racial justice, shows that our politicians are out of touch with Americans. And so we're going to have a pulling back of power and of wealth to the people and away from those who are holding power and wealth right now.
Judge Griffen?
I agree with Ms. Dickson. I would remind us that we now have, as the third in line to the president, a Christo-fascist. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson from Louisiana, is a self-proclaimed Christian nationalist, which is always an interesting contradiction in terms. Jesus refused to become head of an empire. and so for somebody to announce that they are a follower of Jesus and say that they are a Christian nationalist tells us they don't know anything about Jesus. But I digress. The the problem is that all 4 members of the Arkansas Delegation of House of Representatives voted for a Christo fascist. Voted for somebody who actually filed a lawsuit after January 6, 2021 to overturn the votes of people in the battleground states. Check the history. He actually filed the lawsuit. He was spearheading the lawsuit. He is a lawyer. He is a Baptist, which means you can be a Baptist and don't know Jesus. And quite honestly, is proud of his reputation. And all 4 members of the Arkansas delegation from Congress, to include the one who is from Pulaski County, who now sits in 2 congressional districts, according to Judge Rudolphi's. Pray for him. Rulings, believe. Votes for somebody who is a Christo fascist, who voted to put somebody 3rd in line to president, who supported an armed insurrection on the very house he sat in. And so if they don't protect their own colleagues' rights and lives, that speaks volumes to me about how little regard they have for the rights of those who Jesus called least of these. Whether the children who are poor, who need money for food, or whether they are immigrants who are trying to be left alone while they feed their families, or whether they're women who need to have their rights to health care protected. Excuse me, my mother was a woman, my wife is a woman, my sister's a woman, my daughters-in-law are women. I have a daughter-in-law who's expecting. Every woman knows that the Dobbs decision was not just a friend's decision, that was a decision to the health of every woman. If you have an ectopic pregnancy, there is only one medical procedure that will save your life. It is not called a prayer meeting. It's called an abortion. If you don't get it, you will die. And for this speaker to have supported the overturning of Roe, to say that the overturning of Roe was one of the best things that happened, tells us that politically, civil rights are half the women, half people in this population are women. So we're not talking about minority rights. I'm sorry.
Amen.
Amen. So, and I guess getting to the mindset behind this assault and this new Christo fascism, as you call it, as you describe it, what do you think was the impetus to this paradigm shift? I mean, I think, and I may be naive in saying paradigm shift, but in my little years on earth, I don't remember racism being so overt in policymaking and legislation in my years, but now it seems overt in not being covert in the methods of how it's being implemented and the institutional things that are being implemented. It seems outward. What can you attribute that outward shift to move away from being covert to overt?
Well, I would contend that it always has been overt. It simply just changed its clothes.
Exactly.
It changed from sheets to suits.
Exactly.
And so what were people in white sheets when I was a child now wear dark suits and ties, and they are both male and female. And now that my children are grown and childbearing ages, and the other point of it is they left from burning crosses to wearing crosses. Amen. And carrying big ass Bibles, and upside down, following somebody who says says I Corinthians when describing a book of the Bible. This is the issue we have. And so we have now what I call the real religion of this society has never been Christianity, it's been white supremacy. White supremacy has been the dominant theology, and now the theology of the society has now wrapped itself around the flag and the Bible. And we've forgotten that this didn't start with Barack Obama. It didn't start with 64. It started in 1619. This society has always been hateful. And what we are dealing with now is the latest manifestation of its hatefulness. And the reason why a current governor of Arkansas, whose name I will not call, has a problem with history is because either she's ignorant of it or she doesn't like the fact that she's implicated by it.
When I started practicing law in the late 90s, I did a lot of Title VII work, employment discrimination, some civil rights work. And a lawyer who had been doing defense work for 30, 40 years tried to tell me at the end of the case, things are a lot better than they used to be. What she meant was, people are nicer about their racism.
Yes.
I thought, makes it harder for me to prove my case, right? And then with the former president, he has unleashed people's comfort and license to speak out what people were taking great pains to try to hide. And it was so difficult to try to dig out. So, I think a lot of people were shocked after he was first elected. Oh, I thought we were past this. I said, oh no, I always knew it was there. Now it is recorded on YouTube and everywhere else that this still exists. We have not resolved these problems. We have not gotten to equality and equity in this country. But man, it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Next question. Do you have any identifiable solutions to eroding this trajectory that we are currently on? And, we have this perception that we are the land of the free and that all men are created equal. That's the premise of this country. But is there an identifiable pathway to that for our community and society?
It is important that we don't keep drinking the Kool-Aid. I stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, but I don't talk. Because a pledge is a promise. And I was told, if you make a promise, don't lie. And you pledge allegiance to something that's a lie, you pledging to lie. So I stand up, but I don't talk. Because I know it's not one nation, it's not indivisible, and it's not under God, and it's not with liberty and justice for all. Now, the first thing we have to do is stop drinking Kool-Aid. We have to tell the truth. And quite frankly, other bar associations can afford to lie because they got a habit of doing that. The W. Harold Flowers Law Society is a bar association from people who have had to live with the lies. And therefore, we do not have a professional incentive to lie. As a matter of fact, we all went to law school to fight the lies. Isaac Brothers fight the power without the beep. Secondly, we have to remember that Frederick Douglass said, I prayed for freedom for years. I got freedom when I prayed with my feet. Piety is not protest. I love Jesus. I love God. I'm a Baptist preacher. I'm a pastor. I write books. I pray, but I understand at the end of the day, we still have to get up and put our clothes on. God doesn't put my clothes on every morning. And so we have to fight. My old folks told me when I was growing up, you have to watch, fight, and pray. And we have gotten a generation or two of young people, everybody's younger than I am now, that don't want to fight. They have confused. I heard somebody say it, Sister Byrd was right. Lifestyle is not the same thing as progress. Please remember that LeBron James was talked out of the most socially effective labor movement that professional athletes could have had by a Black person who had a lifestyle in the White House. I know everybody loved Barack. Okay, I voted for him, told, gave money, all right? But the truth of the matter is, if the NBA had gone on boycott when the pandemic happened, that would have said something. We have to protest, and we have to be willing to protest in ways that make the system uncomfortable. Martin Luther King put the system on check. And he took the children doing it. And lastly, we have to remember that a photo op is a moment, not a movement. A photo op is a moment. It is not a movement. Being photographed with a politician whether it's at your banquet or at the politician's office, wherever, is not progress. It does not change. It does not keep people from getting shot by the police. It doesn't keep people getting moved out of their neighborhoods by redlining. It doesn't keep people from not having their voting rights honest. Getting our photographs. I turn down stuff. Okay? Because I've been able to buy my own food for a while now. I am not the weight I am now because other folks fed me. And so I can tell people, no, thank you. I don't have to come to your bill. But what I want to know is, why do you invite me to your meal when you won't listen to me about what matters to our people? And so I'll stop by saying, Sierra Lincoln once wrote a book about the Black church, who said, the Black church has its prestige pimped and its power or its relevance questioned. And the same thing is true for those of us in the Black Civil Rights Movement. Our prestige is pimped. They want to photograph with us. Certain person went down to UAPB last week. A week after it was divulged that the Justice Department, Education Department had written Arkansas about all the hundreds of millions of dollars that UAPB, AM&N had been not given. The popular word for it now is diverted. I would call it stealing. Okay. By the way, it happened at Little Rock too. The school that was called Little Rock Senior High School, now Central High School, was built by money that was intended to be used to build a Black high school. And when Little Rock Central got up, it was the most beautiful high school in the country. Black parents want to know how come the Black high school was bad, and the word was the money for building Little Rock Central, Black high school had been used to build Little Rock Senior High School. So the Black high school built was Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, built by donations from the Julius Rosenwald Fund. Dunbar is a Rosenwald school. I went to a Rosenwald school. Rosenwald was the head of Sears. And that means that the money for the black high school opposite Central was raised by black folks and a white charity because the tax money that our people paid was stolen. We're seeing the same thing happen now.
Yeah,
Happening now. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light?
And the chancellor was just so happy to be in the moment. Wasn't it not in the movement, but in the moment. Wasn't that?
Well, you know, I was told by my parents, you don't have to go visit everybody. And mama wouldn't let me eat some people's cooking. I may be the only one. Mama wouldn't let me eat some people's cooking. If they got a nasty house, they're gonna have nasty food. Hello?
Yes.
If we know she's nasty in her house, why would we invite her to bring her stink to our house? Yeah, I mean, exactly. Excuse me. You want to come down here? Announce where the money is. And I thank you, Eric. Eric, I thank you for that. Eric Buchanan says he's soliciting help for that lawsuit. And I would simply say, this is an all hands on deck moment. Because if that lawsuit isn't brought by our generation of Black lawyers, excuse me, what the hell do we go to law school for? Why are we here? If not us, who? If not now, when? If not here, where? And so I know I can't judge nothing no more. They're glad I can't. And I'm glad I can't too. But I can tell people we have to fight. Nobody is going to do justice for us. We have to take justice.
Holly, I'm gonna allow you to answer, but just kind of building on what Judge Griffen has said, when you say fight, I think in my mind, as a lawyer, as a litigator, I know what that may look like, but how do we deliver that solution or that methodology to the masses? And I think our brother last night talked about organizing and the movement. We are the movement. But can you build on what fighting looks like? Is it filing a lawsuit like Eric plans to? Is it vocalize? I mean, that's one way. As litigators, we can fight, but how do we deliver that to the masses, those that don't have that capacity? As Arkie was talking about, we don't all have to be the one signing the lawsuit, but what can others do? How do we organize and get that fighting done successfully?
I made my career change to the ACLU of Arkansas because I was tired of winning my cases, but not winning the movement, not creating change. My clients were happy. We were getting what the system allowed, but we were also litigating issues that had been litigated and won in the 1970s. And this was the 90s. how were we gonna create change? I was disgruntled. For me, the final straw was case against the Arkansas State Police under a long time decree by the federal court system for discrimination against its troopers, Black and female troopers. And that consent decree was almost as old as my client and me. If they can't treat their own people right, the rest of us don't have a chance. So this is why I moved to the ACLU. I thought, okay, talking to the press about the cases, communications work, maybe trying to make some laws in the legislature, or trying to stop some bad laws. But it's all hands on deck, and it's a full court press, and it is also the organizing. Our courts, our legislatures, our executive branches are not immune to public opinion, and we've got to mobilize as many people who can come out, speak, press as possible. Not only do we have to continue the litigation fight, we also have to continue to protect those avenues of democracy that continue to be under attack. Our rights to free speech, our rights to assemble, transparency, voting. Ms. Byrd wants to say something.
Oh, no, I was waiting to be through.
All right, the gerrymandering, the disenfranchising at the ballot box. You know, we've got the one case in the country where a judge has ruled since the passage of the Voting Rights Act that we don't have a private right to sue under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It's sitting at the 8th Circuit. We're waiting for a ruling. But there aren't enough voices saying this is unacceptable. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, et cetera. So it's going to take all of that together.
Well, Holly, what you said reminds me, look at the pressure created from the media, ProPublica primarily, enforcing the issue of ethics at the Supreme Court. Now you have a court that is very aware that they're being watched. We saw the very latest with Clarence Thomas on the forgiveness of that $267,000 loan and everything. And you have the justice and saying, oh, yes, we're capable. You didn't have that energy around the court without ProPublica and people weighing in media. That's a way to create the heat. Talk to young people, they're savvy, they understand so much about social media that I don't think we spend enough time harnessing to bring attention to this matter, to develop the heat and the energy we need around these issues and the people who are blocking that way. So that's what that reminds me of when you were saying. We weren't talking about ethics and the Supreme Court a year ago, were we? It was on nobody's radar, but ProPublica did the digging and the work and so forth. And I'm kind of hoping that Matt Campbell, who's moved to the Arkansas Times, may give it a leg up on doing investigative reporting. But sometimes we have to think of creative ways of using FOIA and other things to unmask this stuff and how public policy is being subverted. And also, we also need to think about the ways that we don't connect the dots for our constituents and for our communities to know this person did this and this is the consequence and this is going to be. I don't think we do a good enough job in communicating that on the grassroots level.
It needs to be put on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to be put on TikTok.
To the point that Sister Arkie Byrd made, and that Sister Holly Dickson made, I wrote down 4 things in the fight. The question is, how do we fight? Eric Buchanan mentioned litigation, and that's obviously one. Education is the second, because a lot of times people don't fight because they don't know how to fight, and they don't know what to fight about. I mean, when you're getting hit by 500 different things, what do you fight? How do you fight it? When do you fight it? Where do you fight it? Thirdly, advocacy. We have to do the advocacy, the TikTok, social media, and then agitation. I told the planners I was gonna say this, we have to be able to connect the dots. We have to connect the dots between gerrymandering here and what's going on in the West Bank. If people in Pulaski County cannot elect their own representatives because a Christo-fascist drives two Christo-fascists, put together a map, Jane English and Neva, yeah, I'm thinking about it, Mountain Helm, put together this map.
Miss Yerden.
Put together this map to gerrymander the legislature. Now we have people on either side of the river in two different congressional districts. Three congressional districts. Now, do we see the connection between that and folks in Palestine who are a majority in their society, but they cannot vote on whether or not they even get a chance to ride on what kind of highways they rode on? Do we see the connection? Do we see that it's one thing to recognize that it's good to celebrate we have a Black woman in power, but please remember that a Black woman in power called Condoleezza Rice was the person who put Fatah movement, that was Yasser Arafat's movement, out of power and brought Hamas into power, because Netanyahu wanted Fatah gone because he didn't want to negotiate for a two-state solution in Palestine. The same folks who didn't want us to have voting rights here don't want Palestinians to have a society. This is all connected. This is all connected. And so we have to educate. Now, the young people understand this, because when Michael Brown got messed over and we had the protests in Ferguson, they were tear gassing. Do you know how the protesters knew how to handle the tear gas? Palestinians were on Twitter saying, listen, when you get tear gas, don't pour water on it, pour milk. Because we've been there. The Palestinians have always been part of our liberation movement. But we get talked out of supporting theirs. So we have to understand that there's a big okie doke being played to get us, number one, at the table of the oppressors, so we will not be the agitators to do the table overturners. Because see, you cannot have a revolution if you want to have a reform. And there's nobody who ever wants to reform mess.
Can you say that again?
You cannot have a revolution if you want to have a reform. If this system is messed up, you cannot reform it. Anybody heard about anything about carpentry? Anybody heard of a plumb line? A plumb line is used to make sure a wall stays straight up, vertical. From the beginning of building construction, it has been known that if a wall is built out of plumb, you cannot reform it. There is only one cure to it. It is called demolition. That's revolution. Otherwise, they would have fixed the leaning ass tower of Pisa. Okay, I do say ass. Because I won't be. No. I talk plain. No, I talk plain. The reason why I say this is because, quite frankly, nobody expects a preacher to talk like I do except Jeremiah Wright. Jeremiah Wright and I get along real well because we understand that people understand leaning ass. Okay? Nobody has tried to do a rehab project for the Tower of Pisa. How old is it? Centuries. But we get talked into having reform conversations. I don't go to bar association meeting when we're talking about reform. You can't reform this criminal justice system. It's jacked up. I mean, You gotta, how you gonna reform a system built on lies? But you're better liars? Hello? Oh, you have an abusive and homicidal police system and you give them body cameras? Oh, so now they can photograph themselves killing folks. All right, now, oh, we can show it in real time. Hello? That's what, if you hire somebody who's a killer, they got and give them a camera, guess what? They can photograph killing folk. That's not gonna keep them from killing folk. And if you have hired people based on the same metric, you don't have a personnel problem, you have a systemic problem. That's not a reform, that's a revolution call. So when we talk about police reform, messed up. Voter reform, that's messed up. Civil rights reform, that's messed up. I mean, you got to overturn tables in the name of God. You know, between Palm Sunday and Good Friday. And preachers didn't say so. Last thing, our church folks got to get out of church. I'm gonna say this. I am sick and tired of walking into pastors' offices who have pictures of Martin Luther King on the wall when that church wouldn't have invited Martin Luther King and wouldn't invite Jeremiah Wright. Hello?
No church will.
Say it.
Martin King was the commencement speaker and the 1958 commencement speaker at Arkansas A&E. During those days, they didn't have this whole day planned out, but the photographer, the historic and legendary photographer, Rice, wore the beret, and I remember going up seeing him at home and everything. He was with King that day and photographed him. Dr. Martin Luther King was at the graduation of Ernest Green from Central High School.
Right.
I was Black to graduate.
In 58.
Was at his commencement. And the only church, Black church in Louisville, that would host King to speak was Reverend Young.
Yes.
Bethel, the Black church that had been on 9th Street, that was broken into, vandalized. Its pew set on fire.
Yes.
Stone painting of a Black man in Little Rock was on 9th Street.
Yes.
What they had vandalized out of Bethel, burned his body. I'm connecting the dots. Okay, but that's why I say you don't need everything.
Connect the dots.
You don't need everything. You just need the committed few and the fearless few, and we all get scared. I don't tell you that sometimes it's work that not be scary to do, but you have to push past the fear and do it anyway. That's all.
I think about the fact that George Howard, W. Harold Flowers, Wiley Branton went around this state representing Black people charged with voting, charged with crimes, and they went into communities where they knew they couldn't have a hotel room, and they knew that the KKK was not only alive, but well. And they did it. So I'm not saying that fear is not real. Fear is real. But this work of revolution has always required that we choke down and choke past our fears. Or as the Zulu term, put a stone in your stomach. I didn't do that. Put a stone in your stomach. No, I didn't. No, that wasn't a response to my cousin. And don't blame that on Jesus either.
Dickson, did you want to chime in?
My mama didn't raise a fool, so kind of the first thing I did for the first big lawsuit I had, which was a class action race case, is I went to the courthouse and I read Miss Byrd's filings in a prior case that was very similar, and reached out to her and got her advice before I even jumped off in the deep end of something I had no business in, but still came out on top of. And so, earlier when I heard you say it doesn't take everybody, it filled my heart with joy, because I think about this a lot, that, folks tend to think we're gonna have to have the majority. No, we don't. There was a group called FAIR. When they say it's fair, it's unfair, right? Like learn means unlearn.
Yeah,
The Patriot Act.
Yeah. yeah.
FAIR was single-handedly responsible for most of the anti-immigration bills that were filed across the country circa 2007, 2009. And it was 3 guys in 3 different spots in America who were good at organizing. 3 guys created all of this havoc and work, and it took thousands of people working on the ground to try to stomp that out. I know we were working hard here in Arkansas, fighting those bills. And so the power of organizing. And I was asked this week by someone who seemed panicked. I frequently talk to people who seem like they're panicking, and I can understand why. And what she kept saying was, does anybody have a plan? Does anybody have a plan? Maybe this lawyer can save us. Maybe that lawyer can save us. I said, well, nobody's fixing to ride up on a horse and solve all these problems, whether it's all the problems with learns or all the problems that we're facing. But does anybody have a plan? Yes, lots of people have a plan. And in large part, it is the exact same plan that we got to draw closer together. And I've been seeing that happen across issue areas, across race, across religions, that are already existing groups who are involved with social justice are drawing closer together so that we can be better on the same page and engage the folks we need to pull off this full court press, all hands on deck that is needed.
And we have to also be forward thinking. There is already a playbook for the first years of the next presidential administration. It's already been published. If you haven't read it, you haven't. Go look it up. There's a 2024 plus playbook already out. Planning what to do by agency. By agency, okay? And so those of us who are in this business to fight have to have the same kind of mindset. Yes, we fight. Yes, we develop coalitions. Yes, we press our fears, but we also have to study. I mean, somebody said, best way to keep, Steve Biko said, the strongest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The strongest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And how does somebody say, free your mind and your will follow?
Questions from the audience?
Brother, you asked about the Jesus, and that they came to say Jesus is you. Well, we have forgotten the fact that Plato hated Jesus, King James hated Jesus. The images and ideologies of Jesus, and many of us, we open our time, and Jesus do not reflect our compassion. And Moses and all of the things. So we're talking about many of us. I believe in the Bible. I'm overreading the Father about Mateo and the lies. My point is that look at how we have accepted this image. And so many of us, if we follow the laws of the book, the image of Jesus is not what we know or understand, because I'm going to tell you, that's a description of Jesus.
Yeah, well, to your point, Brother Johnny Hassan. That's why I talk about the difference between piety and protest. I've been black a long time. And you could not grow up in my house without being black and religious. Okay, you had to be black, you had to be religious, and you had to be busy. That's the requirement. However, I must say to the point you made, we have to remember, and this point Sister Arkie made, Martin Luther King's radical revolution movement and Malcolm X's radical revolution movement and John Lewis's radical revolutionary movement and Huey Newton's radical revolutionary movement all had one central ground platform: the Black religious tradition. Most folks don't know the Panthers were based at Allen Temple Baptist Church in Oakland. Okay, the pastor of that church during the Panthers is still alive, Reverend J. Alfred Smith Sr. He's a friend of mine. We know King from Dexter. We know John Lewis from American Baptist College. What we need to understand is those were the prophetic, they were the radical notions of the Black church. Yeah, they had prayer meeting, but they got out in the streets too. My pastor growing up didn't want to get arrested and came back from the Baptist convention saying, Reverend Joseph Jackson said it was wrong for a preacher to get arrested. As a child, I knew that was messed up because I read the Bible. All the folks who were doing the good stuff in the Bible got arrested. Jesus got arrested. You know, I'm thinking, so as a child, I knew I was messed up. Now, I couldn't tell my pastor or my mom and daddy that the pastor was messed up because I loved to be able to sit down at night. But I knew there was something messed up about it. The point I'm making is the notion of education, agitation, advocacy, join litigation. King got in trouble, the lawyers got him out. The reason I want to go to law school is because the lawyers were going to get King out of jail so he could get in more trouble. Is this what y'all want to talk about?
Yes.
We need to go back to basics. If you want to know how to do a movement, Dr. King spelled it out in the letter to Birmingham.
Right.
He spelled it out.
And he spelled out how you can, who you cannot trust to get the movement done. You cannot trust white moderates.
Amen.
King said you cannot trust white moderates. In 1963, King said, excuse me, that includes white Democrats. I fell out with the Democratic Party because when we were trying to get Black judges in this state, who controlled who was elected judges? The Democratic Party. The Hunt decree was filed when Democrats were in charge. 3 Democrat office holders were the named defendants in the Hunt decree. Am I right? And quite frankly, Black lawyers were trying to get the Democratic Party to support Black judges and to abolish the multi-member districts. And white Democrats would not go along. I love y'all.
What do you think the future higher education is in light of the attack on the DEI and the university system?
Great question. First of all, let me suggest something. I think that the reading of the June decisions needs to be done very carefully. Although I'm no longer a judge, I still can read. They did not abolish DEI generally. They abolished DEI in higher education. remember, the defendants were Harvard and University of North Carolina. Wasn't Sears, wasn't Walmart, it wasn't Federal Express. And so, I mean, I just was talking to somebody, a big DEI meeting in Philadelphia. In the civilian world, DEI is still going. And they are preparing to press back. They understand that they cannot afford to look like they're caving in on DEI and keep their market share of voters, of consumers. Exactly. Now, what we got to do is connect with that. Secondly, we got to do is we have to say something to so-called everybody who has your skin ain't your kin. Everybody who is your kin ain't your kind. I will say this, I have 2 degrees from the University of Arkansas. The chancellor of the University of Arkansas made his career on DEI. And then after he got to where he wanted to get to, he blew up DEI behind him. And let me say this, the rest of us, by and large, have given him a pass. If a white chancellor had done the same thing, every Divine Nine movement would have a resolution. Every church convention would have had a resolution. Folks would be talking about, I'm not going to send my child to school. They wouldn't be talking about go hogs go, woo pig suey. But I have been waiting to see when Black folks were going to recognize that just because a Black person does a hateful thing doesn't mean we give that person a pass. We ought to have learned that from Clarence Thomas, because I'm old enough to remember when we had the conversation about Clarence Thomas. And folks were saying, hey, we can't fight Clarence Thomas because he.
Your Honor,
You want to give us some final thoughts?
Your Honor, I do want to flag that there was a quiet, strong Hispanic woman who took the U of A to task about the process and the lack of inclusivity in that movement, which just brings it back home again to the things that we've talked about for more than a decade, the power of Black, brown organizing in this struggle.
And Black, and to your point, you're right, Holly, to your point, the graduate and professional students organization at Fayetteville have come out with resolutions strongly critical of Charles Robinson. I will call his name because everybody needs to know his name and say, listen, he may look like us, but he's a hater. But the fact of the matter is, we have to do the kind of work, collaboration. Because the University of Arkansas got its money by stealing money from AM&N UAPB. They're about done.
I told you I was gonna nod a lot.
I'm gonna do a shameless plug. My friend Alan Buzak and I have written a book talking about this stuff called Parables, Politics, and Prophetic Faith. You can get it at Pyramid. And Parables, Politics, and Prophetic Faith. Talks about everything from Palestine and Ukraine to 2 chapters on reparations. I wrote 2 chapters on reparations. By the way, how come we can have meetings about everything, but our church meetings never have about reparations?
All right, and there we have it. They have a right to feel 12:20.
Always love spending time with you.
I hope I haven't made an enemy out of you.
All right, everybody, we're gonna try to get started with our last session so we can conclude today. We thank you for your attention, time, and for everything, and it's gonna be, I had already started to go before us, and he may need that mic back there, so we'll cut it, we'll cut it off, we cut it off, and we'll see, hopefully. All right, and we'll go from there. We have been blessed to have really great, I mean, a great program, and I'm not gonna belabor that anymore, just jump into our topic so we can kind of get on out of here. But well, thank you all for, I tell you, it is definitely a team. It is not me by myself, because it's my staff. There's so many people that make this possible, so I appreciate y'all. But you know what, I want to say thank you all because there's some of y'all that come consistently, Judge Bill, Eric, Danielle, Austin, Judge Bailey, y'all come consistently out there, some on Zoom as well, that I don't see your names, and I appreciate y'all's efforts in supporting it. I said this year was gonna be my drop the mic moment, that this is it. I said no more, but I heard it's like a woman having a baby that, after you have the baby, it's like, oh, I don't know. I think I could do it again, yeah. But I don't know. I think I'll get my tubes tied, baby. Yeah. Okay, I'm making it anymore. But anyway. We're gonna talk about comparison kills, and if we'll go to that, slip this out of that ugly dude that's about to come up. Do that one. You got it. There you go. Do that next one. There you go. Okay. All right. But anyway, what the whole point we were having, obviously the committee formulates topics, and we kind of decide what to do. And so one of the things we're talking about is that there are some issues in our community with respect to how it is that we as Black people interact with each other. And a lot of the things were hit upon, so I'm not going to repeat it, but there's this concept that I think that really talks about it, and that's it, the crab in the bucket. It makes it so plain. That's what it is. I mean, and that's what it says. Oh, no, no, you don't. Where you think you're going? You come back down here where you belong. And it's this mentality, this mindset that in our community, that somehow or another that it's important for us to stay together down and not allow others to graduate, go up and elevate. And if they do, then somehow or another, there's this mindset that it's important for us to come down. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, in this whole mindset of crab in the bucket. And I had been saying for all my life, crab in the basket, until this young man over here corrected me and said it's actually crab in the bucket and not crab in the basket. I always thought it was crab in the basket, but it was crab in the bucket. Okay, crawdads. Okay. Okay, yeah. There you go. That's right. That's a good point. Yeah, crabs are a little bit expensive for that. So yes. But also we said the conversation is called crabs, crawdads. All right. So if you go to that next slide. All right. So there are four things, and I like our Justin Pearson was something. He talked, and then he said, "Now I got 3 points," and he went through each of his 3 points too. He made sure he covered his 3 points. Well, y'all have 4 points, okay? And I'm not gonna talk. I'm gonna give my 4 points and kind of go from there. But I got to tell you a few things before you get this first one. I think that you have to embrace collaboration, but before you get to that, you have to understand, I believe, why it is that we're crabs in the first place. And it's interesting. I was in a trial, and I didn't really. We had a hearing, and a person from the Arkansas State Crime Lab was one of the expert witnesses, and she got on the stand. She was talking about DNA, and she said 99.9% of all of our DNA is identical. I did not know that. And I actually looked it up because I thought I was like, there ain't no way in the world she's telling the truth. But it's true. You can Google and look it up. And she testified as an expert. She said that 99.9% of all of our DNA is identical. All gender, races, everything. It's that 0.1% that makes the difference. And I want you to think about it from this perspective. And then it'll make sense. If you look at the world from the space, it looks like a little ball. Yeah. As you come down closer, you begin to see countries. As you come down even closer, you begin to see continents. As you come down even closer, you begin to see nations. As you come down closer, you begin to see states. As you come down closer, you begin to see streets. As you come down closer, you begin to see houses. As you come down closer, you begin to see people. And see, the problem is that we have been looking at it from the wrong perspective because we all assume that we're in a different boat. We do at times, and that's what makes it, because we get so comfortable being here, but we really are in the same boat. And I think one of the ways that we see that is a number of people that have been leaving this earth just in this past month or so. And when you see that, our brother Bobby's not here because he lost his sister, and they're funeralizing her today. And then Bruce Moore, that was a surprise. And then just think about the number of people that just left this earth, because then you begin to see why it's so important to look at things not from that individual perspective, but from the big picture. And I think that we as Black people, that's one of our problems. I think we get so caught up in the individualism that we forget the larger picture. We all in the same boat. And I think essentially that's what the whole purpose and what was behind what we're trying to do, and why it is that comparisons have killed us. We've been so concentrated, Austin, on what your comparison yourself to somebody else. That ain't what the problem is. And I've heard this, and I've tried to disavow people of this. I've heard a young African-American attorney say that I'm going to be bigger than Bill James. Bill James is not your problem. Right there, back there, that's the person, Latrice Gray, that's your problem. Because the public defenders represent more people than anybody. But see, what messes you up is when you start concentrating on the wrong things and you stop looking at the larger picture, that's where your focus gets messed up. And I think that that's what we do as a community. I will say this one thing, and I like Justin Pearson. It was really interesting. I heard you, I was overhearing your conversation, Daniel. I heard what you said about, I was worried about how the white people were going to react to what he said last night. I was so worried about how the white people were going to react to what he said last. I really was, Brother Michael. I was like, oh, and I was in the back, so I couldn't see their reaction. I could not. So afterwards, I was able to go up to some white people. I intentionally went up there and I was trying to see how they felt. I said, oh, I'm so glad you came. And they were like, I am so glad I came. This is so good. I'm coming back. Tell me next year I want to come back for more. And the problem is, again, we get so caught up in thinking we try to make them feel comfortable. They need to hear it. That's the very thing they need to hear. You got a big old booger in your nose, and you're like, no, nobody will come up to you and tell you, take a piece of paper towel and take that booger out your nose. Because I want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to feel bad. So I'm gonna make you looking like a fool all day long. And that's what we need to do. And that's what happened last night. It didn't just happen last night. Malik Yoba did the same thing. And then it happened again with Senator Chesterfield, Arkie Byrd, Judge Griffen, Holly Dickson. That's what we gotta have. You have got to make people feel uncomfortable. And those who chose to leave the room, oh well. You know, and that's what just has to happen. And like he said, we cannot allow people to get by. We have to say something. But I will say this and I'll move on. And that's it. My daddy has did something to me when I was young. And this is where I think another genesis of our problem is. I think that we as Black people hate ourselves. We hate ourselves. When I was growing up, I had a project in high school. And the project was to get tree leaves from the trees. And you have to get as many tree leaves as you could from different trees. And you bring the tree leaves in, and that was the project. Y'all had that project too? Okay, I had the same project. Okay, well, this is what I did, brother. I said, you know what I want to do? I'm on Lawton Heights where I went. It was across the street from a very prestigiously wealthy white neighborhood. So I went over across the street from Lawton High, and that's where I got my tree leaves from. I cut down, they had all different types of trees and stuff like that. I cut them down, and I brought them home. I lived in the hood, okay? We lived in we call it a trailer. I don't know what y'all, trailer house, we live in a trailer. So I brought it home to my house, and my daddy's in the military, and so I had him in the house, I had him in the living room. My daddy came in, he said, "What is this doing in here?" And I said, "Daddy, it's okay. I got these from the neighborhood across the street from Lawton High. These leaves are from the white people's area." My daddy took those leaves and threw them out. It was like, but the thing was, my mindset was so messed up. Even though I grew up in a home where my parents taught us how important it is to be careful and mindful of the fact that we were Black, it was so ingrained in me that white is better. It was ingrained in me. And it didn't help the fact that over the piano at our house was this picture of this white guy with blue eyes and long hair that was supposed to be Jesus. And it didn't help that when I went to church at Bethlehem Baptist Church down the street, when I went down to that church, that the picture that they had above the baptismal area was a picture of a white guy with blue eyes and long hair. So it reinforced in me that even my Savior is white. So you have to understand that us hating ourselves is something that comes at us. Not because it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden, it's like, no, you hate yourself and you don't even realize it because that's the way the system has taught us to think. It is so deeply ingrained in us that we don't even recognize it. And so what we have to do, and the reason why I believe that the crab or the crawdads and crawfish in the buckets or whatever the analogy is so powerful in our community is because we see, and here's the problem. See, the problem is think about the concept. Somebody's trying to escape. There's nothing that's holding you. Nothing's holding you. Nothing's getting you out of nothing's preventing you from getting out of the bucket. But other crabs. And so that's the problem I believe we see in our community. So this is about solutions. It's not about, just identifying problems, but it's about solutions. So quickly, 4 solutions. 1, we have to embrace collaboration. We have to foster a spirit of cooperation and support, celebrating the achievements of others rather than feeling threatened by them. And I did not write this, somebody else did. By others, by working together, we can create an environment that nurtures growth and success for all. And I think the mentality has to be that we have to adopt in our community. And this is not just in the Black community, but in the larger community. We see this in other communities, and we always wonder why it is that other people could come in after us and do better than us. Because again, I think it was sown in us to hate each other. Whereas in other cultures, that was not there. And also the mindset, and this is, we talked about this before, and it's interesting, and I know the answer for Sister Charlotte, so you don't have to answer this, but how many of you all were taught about the Little Rock Nine in school? They went to school in Arkansas. I mean, nobody in here. You all went to school in Arkansas. Or how about the Elaine Massacre? And this, what is right. Look at there. Right. That's why Judge Bell just said that she lived in Elaine. You lived in Eastern Arkansas since 75 and didn't learn about it. And so within the last few years, the problem is that we as Black people, it's just other cultures as well. We have to learn to cooperate, collaborate, work together. That's the only way we're going to be able to break this thing that's going on in our community that's causing us not to work together. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. That's right. Exactly. That mindset is the mindset that has to stop. And here's the thing that's kind of scary. It's still going on because as Arkie was talking about John Carter, and the things that they did with him on 9th Street, there's a case involved that Benjamin Crump is doing in Mississippi. And the thing that's eerie, but I think God did it on purpose in terms of purposing this man's life like this. His name is Raheem Carter. And I don't know if y'all have seen about him, but he's the young black man in Mississippi that he's working on that case, and he was stopped, and they have him on there's like those deer cameras that they had, and they got him caught on the deer camera running, and he was basically lynched. Right. This is in 22. In 22 in Mississippi. Yeah, no, you can see him on the camera, you know, running. He doesn't have a shirt on and he's running. And you know how deer cameras are, they just catch a glimpse of them. But Raheem Carter, but you got, think about that. John Carter lynched in Little Rock in 27 on 9th and Broadway. And then that's still going on. And so what we have to do is we have to learn, right. Yeah, exactly. So we have to learn to collaborate, because it's through the effort of collaboration that we learn. I learned a lot of stuff over the past 3 days that I thought I knew that I didn't even know.
Right.
But you do it because of collaboration, us working together, us coming together, different places, different spaces, and that's how we learn. And so that's, I think it's one of the things that's necessary.
Okay, some of our collaboration, I think including family business. And just like, thank you. Peace be upon you. Some of our collaboration can be like family business, because just like, here articulated so well, the stories are powerful, but the information is passed not through theology, not through textbook or so forth, because many of our stories are not written, are never be written. And so for the Baptist group now, seeing music and AA, she's asking for people to come to her library and her museum. Okay, why? Because she's collecting. So it's events and stuff like that. But yeah, I think one of the things that my family has got to do, but I'm also telling you, I'm the one, I got many stories that I can tell, but I have nothing written. Okay, and I just used it 1927. I interviewed my office, two uncles that came to the office of the family union, and I asked him on John and on Duke, on the Duke now, I asked him, why did you offer something? 1927, right? Witness, him and his brother, witness in dragging John Carter down the street. Right. And they took the thing to that's so.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point. That part of what we have to do is not just use there are different means. You have to cut that microphone off if you don't mind. There are different means that we have to use to be able to do that. And you're right, collaboration is not just in efforts like this, but it's also at the house. And I think that's one of the things that he even mentioned last night, which I thought was really good, was that when you go over to Gigi's house, what is Gigi doing? You know, is Gigi just telling you this, but is Gigi actually teaching you, telling you, training you? So it's an all hands on deck approach. Okay, let's go to the next one. Cultivate empathy. Again, this young man and I had a debate about what empathy was. I was telling him that, you know, I empathize with somebody. He said, you can't. I said, well, you can. I mean, I can empathize with you, but we had a little debate going. But I think empathy means developing, it enables you to understand and appreciate the challenges others face on their journey towards their goal. It encourages us to lend a helping hand and provide encouragement rather than pulling them down out of our own self-interest. And one of the things that Judge Griffen just got through saying, which I think is so important, is that, and this is the thing that frustrates me, how many Black people, when they get where they're going, will shut the door and blow up the bridge. And they do that. I mean, we see that with Clarence Thomas, and then I didn't know about and I hope Harold Flowers, what we need to propose a resolution that we as a society adopt a resolution that we send to U of A and say that that's wrong to the chancellor. We do not agree with that. How dare you do this? We didn't know. Now that we know, I think we need to do something within Harold Flowers to make sure that that is something that is done. But that's an example of how it is that it's important to be empathetic, because if you're not empathetic, then what'll happen is that you don't really realize and understand what other people are going through. And that helps you to help other people. I think it prevents you to get from getting the door slammed. And one thing too is that whether you have children or not, you have to plan for the next generation. And so you have to have somebody that you're pouring into. I know Judge Bell does. I know Judge Bailey does. I know you do, besides your children. I mean, and Latrice, I know you do. I've seen the fruit of who you pour into. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? All of us have had, even though we want to have, whether you have kids or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is that you have to have the mindset that I got to prepare a generation. I got to prepare somebody else. And when you have that mindset, you begin to get global and not just looking at your own. And that's the mindset that we have to have if we're ever going to get to the point that we want to get to. And then I like what is each one teach one. That sort of mindset. And then each one, each one reach one and then teach them. But I can't get it right. But anyways, it's the concept of teaching, reaching, and having those people teach other people, and that's important. All right, go to the next slide.
I like Dr. Gilbert's suggestion about when you go to the bid, bring a person and training.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Exposure.
Yeah.
Is everything.
You're right. You're right, Judge.
I was telling somebody. I didn't even.
No, good. No, this is to be interrupted. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I was relatively intelligent and was trying to get in law school. I tested and it was an old case, so I can say what it was, but I found the paper 20 years later and thought, I could get it in law school. And I literally did not know an attorney, a judge or somebody. It was interviewed with someone that took me to the Harold Flowers meeting to introduce me to Judge Arkie Byrd, Bill and Judge.
Look at there.
Wow. And I couldn't even now in.
Wow.
And didn't know a person that helped me get in law school.
Wow.
And they introduced me to them, and I had a conversation. And they wrote it.
Wow.
Right. But somebody saw interest.
Go ahead.
I told the right person.
Right.
And they apparently, I'll never forget when I first saw Judge Neal. And they were, he and arts and color were just that. They were having both of them sitting side of the.
Right.
And guess where I was sitting? Right here.
Okay.
In front of them, it was an auditorium style. And they were cutting up.
Yeah.
Even in my college, and everything, I just didn't have it in my family.
Wow.
And none of my parents had it. And so somebody was interested in me.
Yeah.
Once I had a problem and I actually reached out. So
Right.
First young people to talk.
Right.
But
That's
for
true.
people, they won't tell you anything.
Right. Right.
I'm inquisitive by nature. And I do stuff like I'm talking to the kids or whatever for it, getting tactics, whatever. And I'm saying, well, it's not adding up. You don't doing it. I was like, well, what did you do? You got kicked out of job for? Is that why you keep it? And then you listen to that. Well, you in here.
All right. Right. Exactly. Right. Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, this is interactive. It is not it's a conversation. That's why one of the things I love about our association, how we're able to do that, because we have such expertise. It would be crazy not for you all to chime in. So I appreciate that. The next point, the third point is rise above negativity. Go back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Rise above negativity. It's crucial to recognize and distance ourselves from negative influences, surrounding ourselves with positive-minded individuals who lift up and inspire us can significantly impact our own behavior and our mindset. And, it's like, who do you want to be in the foxhole with? We think about that example. It's like somebody who's like, oh, no, it's cold out here. Oh, no, I don't have a place to go to the bathroom. Oh, no, they may shoot at me. That person right there is going to get you killed. In addition, well, they'll probably survive and they'll kill you, get you killed, that kind of thing. So, it's like you have to make sure that you're around the right people. And in our community, again, it's easy to be negative because of the things we see. I mean, you can look at all the things that are going on and really get like to the point, just like, why? What effort? Why put forward? Why even try? Because of all the things. And one of the things I've seen as well that we have to work together in is this in the Hunt decree and the seats that were created by the Hunt decree, they are not owned by anybody. And I think that sometimes we look at what has been done in other communities that they did with their seats. You try to do a legacy seat where you say, okay, well, I'm gonna, there's a difference between saying, I'm gonna try to get this person in, that person in, that person in, like that. That's one thing. But to say, no, this is my seat, and I have the right to bequeath that seat to somebody else. And so that's one mindset. And then the mindset that if I get there and I'm there, that I have the right to talk bad about, say things about, and go say different things about people in different positions. Here's my problem. One is, it is not your seat. First of all, it belongs to the people, and you're occupying it and holding it for a period of time. Okay. But as an African American, you have a heightened responsibility to understand that you're there, but realize why you're there. You didn't get there because you were able to run in the larger district and get elected. You're there because you had to run in a district that was carved out because of discrimination.
Yes.
And when you get there and you understand that, then it's like you apply that to how you dispense justice. And one of the things that it's like, this is not a Hunt seat issue, but Jacoby and I had an experience where a white attorney in Lone Oak said to us, he said, you know what? We were just talking, chit-chatting. He said, I had two clients. I had a white client and a black client. They were the same age. They did the same identical crime. Everything was identical. But this black judge gave the black client more time than the white client. And he was asking us, what's up with that?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. This white attorney is asking us, what's up with this black judge giving black men more time, a black man more time? I think that's what it goes back to. It goes back to, see, that's that part of that problem. And we have to get to a point, and you see that. But here's the thing, Austin, with that, because when I identified that, you got to realize you got to practice law in front of people. And you have to get to a point where you say, you know what? I understand who they are and what they are, but I got to rise above who they are and what they are and still get to that point, because I'm going to need that person to do some things for our community, but I realize who they are. And so what I'm trying to say is I agree with this slide that you try to avoid people who are negative, but the reality is you're going to run into them. And so you have to know how to navigate around them and identify them, because we have that in Harold Flowers. We have it in churches. You have it wherever you go, in every organization. I don't care where it is, in your family. And as beautiful as your family may be, you have that in the family. And so it's like you have to learn, and at the end of the slide in a minute, you'll see the point. You have to make a choice as to who you are, what you're going to be, but that's part of the issue. You just got to get to that point. And so I think that, you just run into negativity. Last slide. Okay, you got to be a change agent. It says, break the cycle of negativity by being the change you wish to see encourage cooperation, celebration others' successes, and extend a helping hand to those in need. By setting the example, we can inspire others to do the same. And that's what, really, to me, that's what Hero Flowers is really got to be about. You know, and not just Hero Flowers, but others. And I have a few recommendations that I want to make, but one in particular. We at our church on the fourth Sunday teach Black history. I'm a Black history teacher. Yeah, it's on off in Southwest Little Rock. It's Abundant Grace Apostolic Church. I'm sorry. Okay, every fourth Sunday we do Black history. We have a Black history program. But now I would love for you to come. I want you to go, but I'm not asking you. I'm not doing that for that purpose. What I'm asking you to do, demand that your pastor start a Black history program once a month or leave that church. That's right. Think about it. I'm offering, this is supposed to be about solutions. And this is a solution? I'm saying it's a shame. And what we have learned, hasn't it revolutionized our church has been revolutionized because we learned, it's like, I didn't know about the Elaine massacre. I didn't know, I want to tell you something that happened because I was a Black history teacher. I went to school in Oklahoma. I went to school in Lawton, Oklahoma. I graduated from Lawton High School, and I told this story before. I had to take Oklahoma history. Do you know I did not learn about the Tulsa race riot? I can name to pass your exam. Miss Neely, I remember the name of my teacher. Miss Neely required that she gave us a map of Oklahoma, and you had to name the name of every county in Oklahoma. You have to be able to write it. That was the final exam. I could do that, but I didn't know that in Tulsa, what had happened. And I didn't learn that till I was teaching Black history. And that was in the 20s, in 2020, in the 2000s or whatever we started this. But what I'm trying to say is demand it or leave. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna give it to Latrice. No, wait, hold on, not just the church. Sororities and fraternities demand that they teach Black history or leave. Get out of that organization. Not just there, civic organizations that are Black organizations, if they are not teaching Black history, demand that they teach it, and if they don't, leave it. That is insane. Why are we're talking about a solution, and you in a place, and you're not even getting the solution, and you have the ability to solve the problem. And everything is there, but you're gonna sit up and you have 1,000 people come to an event, or 50, or 100, or 200 people come to an event, and you won't teach Black history? That's insane. So get out of it if they don't do it. And I say this in turn to Latrice, if it's a university, because we had Dr. Naeem Akbar. That's when I first learned, when I went to Florida State. That's when I first learned about Black history, because of Dr. Naeem Akbar. We had a phenomenal Black history program. And Dr. Akbar changed my life. When I saw this intelligent, articulate Black man telling me that Black people did not start here in the United States. And he opened up my understanding that we are the original people. And and I'm gonna say this too, and I'll turn it over to Latrice. And this is really mind-blowing thing. He showed us, he said, we're talking about Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra, and y'all don't have a problem with that? Or what? Isn't that what she did? No, who was she? Wasn't she Cleopatra? Elizabeth Taylor. It was like he shook my world. He said, Elizabeth Taylor is playing Cleopatra, and you don't have a problem with this. Now, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna really turn it over to Latrice, and then we're gonna get home. And that's this. My sister and I, for her 65th birthday, we went to Las Vegas. So she wanted to go to Las Vegas. Her husband died, so she had to have somebody to go with. So I traveled. I'm her new travel buddy. So we went to Las Vegas, and so we were trying to figure out what we're gonna do. And so we saw this thing that said Michael Jackson, and there's this white guy who was playing Michael Jackson. And then she looked and she said, we're not going to that Michael Jackson show. And it wasn't because of the white guy that was playing Michael Jackson, it was because the Jackson 5 were being played by white people in a show in Las Vegas. So think about that. People who don't know who the Jacksons are, and you go to the Michael Jackson show and you see the Michael Jackson and his 5 brothers are all white. I'm like, come on. I'm not going to, but Latrice gonna take us home. Go ahead to Latrice.
We're looking at the very in here. I was behind the figures. I wish I was in the time.
Yeah. No way. Wow. That's right. They sure did. They sure did. And Dixie, you're right. You were so right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Wow.
Danielle was asking, what part of your church program does the Black History segment come in?
It's the entire program. The entire, that Sunday is broken up into 2 parts. It's health and Black history. So we have a segment on health where we have a person that teaches about issues that deal with health, and then the rest of it is Black history. We just talk about nothing but Black history.
So during the service.
During service, that is the service. That is the service. The service is Black. It's not on the 4th. It's not in February. It's not on the one. No, we gonna have somebody give us a Black history speech. No, it's the entire service is Black history. It's history. It is history. You're right. You're right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's true history. It is history.
So, like, I teach Sundays.
Mhm.
Sunday. And, I'm always telling you, if you talk about moves,
They're Black.
God created. I would challenge you to watch the National Geographic protocol, real map.
Right. Go ahead now. You go that. Yeah. Go ahead. He's hitting on something. Real Adam. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
National Geographic program.
Yeah.
Show called Real Map.
Mhm.
It traces DNA.
Exactly. Right.
It always is historical.
Right.
And like I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Okay, Black folks, okay.
They did.
Then they were able to get these genealogists.
Exactly.
DNA experts. And they traced and they found
They did.
a tribe in Tanzania, Africa, where every male in this world has DNA.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's the Geno or something like the Geno Eve and the Geno Adam. When you find out who they are, but again, that only happens as a result, right? And it's available and out there. So I'm gonna try to conclude here and with these 3 things. And we'll go home. Number 1, you got to figure out, you change it to crawfish or whatever, but crawdad. But see, I went to New Orleans. I went to school in New Orleans. We call them crawfish. So that's why I got crawfish. Down there, they call them crawfish. But are you a crab in a bucket? Number 1, are you a crab trying to get out of the bucket? And here's the dangerous one. Are you the crab pulling other people back down to your level? Because what you got to realize is that we stand on the shoulders of somebody else, and our obligation as a generation is to make sure that the next generation gets better. 2 final comments. 1, I went to Puerto Rico years and years ago, and they have a national park there. And there's a saying in the national park that stuck with me. And essentially it says that we are basically caretakers of the world. And we're supposed to make sure that the world is made better for the next generation. That's our obligation. And the final point is that I did hear what someone said, I think Arkie said about history. I agree with, I think it's Edinburgh. and others, and that is that I think that if you do not know your history, you are destined to repeat it. And I think that what we're going through is not anything unique, but it's our challenge for our generation. You know, we weren't put in the slavery generation of the body physically. We have an even more insidious form of slavery because it's the slavery of the mind. And the chains are different and they're more powerful, like what Judge said about how that if you can, the most powerful tool of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And so that's where we are. We are in a generation where that's what we have to free ourselves. And here's the crazy thing about it. Everything is available. And you want to hide something, they say this from people, just put it in the book. And it's right there. So thank you all. This has been phenomenal. Thank you. This is, we appreciate y'all for your coming. We're going to conclude this seminar.
Don't forget that our history is not exact. Our history is in our ethnic African 2 points. My great grandfather was Caucasian male, and my great grandmother was an African female, Caucasian male. Okay, and he was his son was born black. Okay, our last income was evening of him. The other one he married is African woman, but he had no respect for the child. Talking about the love that his child, unfolding what in our world about. His child was called Griffen, and in the history, it said Rick, the last skin nigga that was the king. So we talk about hate. Hate is an enemy in the mentality of those who hate. So the end word comes from what? The hate. Okay, when the father died, he loved the African woman. Why he loved the African woman? He married her. Okay, so my great grandfather was called Rick Jenkins Jr. And his daddy was Rick Steve. Okay, what I'm saying is that just like Obama, the Obama is the first African descent to lead this nation. We refuse to accept that his father was Kenya and his mother was Kansas. African American, but nobody wants to say that because the Caucasians don't want to be like Obama. Was the first person human being to be the leader of this nation.
He was the first
Identified, yeah, because I think, yeah, right. That had African, exactly. That's right. Thank you, Austin. That's true. That's what happens when you have Black history. Yeah, you do that. So, but anyway, I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you. I need your CLE forms before you leave, please. CLE forms and evaluations. Austin, I got to send you one because you're a speaker. I'll send you one, and our card as well. You need to see it. Goodbye to everybody on Zoom. You take those.